also known as a P&L, should be included in financial presentations, whether they're highlights or summarized or detailed. In years past, when Don Agan was the airport manager, the detailed town P&L did include the airport, even though it was very summarized in dollars. Laura Lowry is likely only doing what she had been instructed to do by the previously elected officials, and I don't want to criticize her or you, the new board, as newly elected officers. My only interest is as a taxpayer, and as a taxpayer, we should get a clearer understanding of how our revenue is being used and accounted for. I believe that the town of Palmyra may also be obligated for funds and grants received subject to certain operational conditions that should be stated. The airport is an asset of the town, but its usage by town residents is minimal, if at all. I do not know, this is another item, I do not know what town purchases are allowable or not, and to what dollar amount. But if there is not an existing policy, this board should adopt one. The approval should be given by the board. I have requested from Laura a detailed balance sheet and comparative statement of operations for 2021 and 22 when the audit is complete and board approved. You may consider this as an open records request when that documentation is approved and completed.
Thank you. Now, let me see here. Michelle. Is it Michelle?
I didn't know that was for speaking. I just thought it was signing.
No.
He can speak though, I signed him up too.
Oh, did you? So, Ralph, you don't want to speak either?
At the moment, I'm all ears.
Okay.
I guess,
Yeah,
let's just see where this goes. I mean, we did, as a preface to coming here today, talking to another neighbor. So we're the next private property on the other side of the cemetery. Airport's our backyard. We have definite interest, especially with some of the considerations that we heard about. We went to the Village of Palmyra meeting. We were invited because our property abuts this. And to be honest, I was concerned as the manager of the airport, maybe the gentleman that you got the email from.
No, he's not there.
He was,
No.
all right, I don't know, this guy came to us, said he was the manager of some sort of, had something to do with management of the airport, because there are some easements on our property to grant access to parts of the airport. So they have interest in what paperwork we have. One thing, honestly, that made me very nervous and uncomfortable was there was a governmental lawyer there. And he was smiles and said, oh, don't worry, you don't have anything to worry about. Everything will be just fine. While they're busy converting AG to the new terms, which elude me right now. As soon as you start converting to, I was born and raised in Milwaukee. I came out here to get away from that crap. They're converting AG property into this public, and from there, what happens? I don't know. I'm hearing about XUV or ATV trails right along the tree line. That concerns me, and my neighbor across the street. So, I guess I can speak to that much. As to, that was before you were voted in. So, obviously you're fresh to it too, I imagine.
Oh, I am, obviously.
And
By the way, I am your neighbor just down the road.
oh, really?
The next curve, just to let you know.
Oh,
But we'll talk to, when we get on this subject, I'll ask the lawyer, because we got a subject on this tonight, if there's anything that you should be concerned with,
Okay,
I can't-
good. That is why we're here ultimately today.
Okay, thank you for coming, we appreciate it. Okay, that's it on public comment.
Yeah, for a while.
Old business, discussion and possible action on the invoices due on the airport rezone. Now, since I've taken office, and these gentlemen, we've gotten invoices sent to the town. Folks, this is Al Larson, I'm sorry, our town attorney. Okay, he's here today. Sorry. So we've gotten invoices. Laura is somewhat, has been confused, I've been confused, most of us have been confused on who's paying for what. So we're gonna kind of open up to that.
In the packet I gave you, are the 5 that we've gotten so far. The town has paid 200. It was for the initial application, I think, for the rezone. If there's been any other payments on the invoices, it's been the airport commission, I think, that made some. The last time I talked to Dave Hefkin, I think he said they paid around 1,700. But the invoices keep coming, so I put all 5 in the packet, and you can see what the village has sent to us on the rezone.
Gentlemen? Questions? Josh?
To be honest with you, I think tabling this until after item number 2 on the agenda would be potentially more helpful, so that we can walk through some of the other items that are included in new business number 1.
So you want to table this?
I would make a motion to table this item until after new business number 2, as stated on the agenda.
Okay. Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, now, we're gonna talk a little bit about, I'm gonna move, if it's all right, number 6 at the bottom, up next. Discussion and possible action allowing Nate Moe to cut and bale grass across the street, 106, by the airport, owned by the town. Yeah, is that all right, gentlemen? Need a motion?
I make a motion that we accept that.
Okay, all in favor of moving this up on the agenda?
Is the motion just to move it up on the agenda?
Yeah.
Oh, I make a motion to move it up.
He's here tonight, want to stand and introduce
Is there a
yourself?
second that you vote on the motion?
Yeah.
You did second? Okay, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Still carries. Okay, number 6, discussion and possible action allowing Nate Moe to cut and bale grass across Highway 106 by the airport. Want to stand up, please?
Sure.
I'll start this out, about a week ago, I was up here visiting with Laura on a Tuesday, and I backed up from the building and I took a phone call, and I was looking across the street. Now, I knew that the township owned, or the town owns that property, and it's what they call a safe zone, I believe, for the airport. And I did notice all these little trees starting to grow up in there, and so on and so forth, and kind of felt to myself, that's always been cut by a farmer or whoever, and been bare out there, and I can't imagine the airport wanting things growing up, in case the plane does go down early or hit something down the road if trees really grow up. So I've thought about that for a couple of days, and this fine gentleman gave me a call wondering if he could bail up that and maintain that property, and pick things up out there. Well, I spoke to Laura about it. I did call Bob Zarell, the manager of the airport, and he was happy or alert to hear somebody wanted to do that. Last night, I got a call from Jim Tiller that lives in the subdivision over there. He asked me if anybody was gonna be cutting that grass this year. I said, why is that? I said, "Well, it's a possibility." He says, we're getting all types of mice in here, the neighbors and I, ever since they just let that go. You know, it's become a problem. And I said, well, I'm working on that, we'll see what happens after the next meeting, but possibly this could be taken care of. So that's why the gentleman's here, he's offered to take care of that whole area over there for us. Some of it, when you glance across the road, actually does not belong to the town, it belongs to
John.
who?
John Blue.
Okay, yeah, so some of actually what you look at over there isn't even the airports. Just the fields run together now. So that's why he's here. And one reason I asked him to be here is obviously, you know, to introduce himself. And I told him that I'd have to check with the lawyer as far as liability.
Right, we probably want to do some sort of an agreement that indicates that Nate would be using his own equipment, he'd be responsible for the maintenance of the equipment, undertake any risks associated, if there's any injury caused by use or misuse of the equipment, that you'd be responsible for that. So I can put together a straightforward agreement for that. What's the rough dimensions of the area, like how many acres?
When I mapped it, it was roughly 9.5 acres. That's the grassy area.
And like, what part of, is it east, west, north of the airport? Just give me an
It's
idea.
East.
East, okay.
Yeah.
And you're not charging the town anything for those services?
No, I just would like access to the grass, basically.
I did mention there's a couple down trees on the north side, would you be willing to take care of that too for us?
Yep. Yeah, I would go through it first to make sure that it's good enough for the hay vines to come through. You know, I
Right.
don't break my equipment, but yeah, that's what I would do. I'd go clean it up as much as I needed to and could, the down trees and all the little trees that are growing up in there before we cut it.
Do you have contact information for me?
Well, you can bring that up here.
Yep, I can email it over to you too.
So, I think it would be a good job to maintain that field. According to what the Airport Commission ordinance says, we are responsible, the town is responsible, for some of the maintenance of the facility. That's about all we're responsible for, just maintenance. So we can allow that. What do you think?
I think it's something that helps both parties. I'm okay with it.
Josh?
My only question would be for Attorney Larson on, notices number 1K, there was an existing lease at one point. Are you aware if releasing this land would be in conflict with anything the town had on file?
Yeah, I wasn't able to find the Galoon lease that's listed there. I did find a lease with,
I talked with him recently about it, and he didn't have that field anymore, he said. I don't know about the lease or anything like that, but he wasn't planning on it.
yeah, the only lease that we had otherwise was with Josh Kaw, but that was for 30 acres, which I presume is a different area.
I don't,
Who's
yeah, I
that
don't know what
someone?
that would be.
That at the time, Don Egan signed that, looks like, on behalf of the town. Or, I'm sorry, he was the airport manager at the time.
But that's for the hay over on this side, right by the airport, there's some nice hay, he must actually seed it now, and it's a great crop.
Yeah, and that was a contract that looks like it was supposed to end December 31st of 2018. So I don't honestly know whether he's still taking hay off there, or if he's still paying rent to the town.
18?
Yeah, it's in the materials there, but it looks like it goes from April 1st of 2014 through December 31st of 2018. As Nick, I said Josh, so it's Nicholas. what's called.
Do you know anything about that, Mr. Jelinek?
I don't know, I know it's been leased to CAW, but I don't know what the terms are in.
Okay, we were looking at it, especially if it's expired.
Yeah.
So,
This is expired.
okay. Any other questions, Josh? Well, I make a motion that we, let, Nate mow and harvest the crops over there this year, which, is just grass. He's agreed to maintain it. And, for this, at least for this year, I make that motion.
I second it pending the agreement they come to.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're gonna just have to get your information here.
Sounds good.
Okay, back to the actual order of business. New business discussion with town lawyer about billing and prior services rendered on several things here. First one, A, ARPA funds.
So in your packet, I printed out the pages that had the highlighted portions that you had questions on.
Right.
So that particular one is on your number one sheet, just in case you needed to see that item again to think of the question that you might have.
At the top, what's the state number?
66178.
I've got a lot of them here. Can I take a look?
Sure.
Thank you. So, do you want me to explain what that
Yes,
was?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had been asked by Winona about the purposes that the town could or could not use the ARPA funds for. And I think that started December 1st was when I spoke with Winona. I researched the rule from the Department of the Treasury on how ARPA funds could or could not be used. I responded to Winona with a copy to Laura confirming that I think it had to do with the proposed purchase of equipment that would be used both for town business and for airport business. And my opinion to her was that the final rule from the Department of Treasury did allow for the purchase of equipment, provided that they were used for a approved town purpose, such as, I think in this case, it would have been snow removal and exterior maintenance, primarily around the airport, but also elsewhere in the town. And I did look for that email. I had a lot of emails to come up with here. I didn't locate that one, but I can supply that to the board. I don't have to forward that to all of you.
And I can see if I have it too.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like I copied you with
Okay.
it, so just couldn't find it today.
Any questions, gentlemen, on ARPA funds?
At this time.
I guess I do have questions on that, and this is asking from the top of your mind, so if you don't know the answer, obviously, no harm, no foul, but, there's obvious expenses that the town did incur and fund via ARPA funding. And we do still have a small amount of that funding that's still available. Are you, I'll say, overly familiar with the final rule from Department of Treasury, or is that more of
No,
a
it's,
research and recover kind of thing?
sorry to cut you out there. It's about 35 pages long, and it applied to all sorts of uses of ARPA funds back when those COVID funds were made available. So I can't say that I know every provision in those 39 pages. I can forward to you if you want that final rule from the Department of Treasury.
I got it, it's over 400 pages long, that's why I was asking
Yeah.
how much. The reason why I'm asking is that there was an interim final rule that Department of Treasury issued, and then there was a final rule that was issued, which I'm assuming is what was ultimately reviewed in December, just given the timing that it was released in like June of '22. And what Treasury ended up doing was allowing communities to use, there was originally the issuance of 2 tranches of funding, and there was restricted uses within 2 different general compartments. One was the revenue loss calculation, and the other one was specific to COVID recovery types of things. Ultimately, when the final rule was released, it allowed communities that received less than or were choosing to only allocate up to $10 million as part of the revenue loss calculation, which opened the window dramatically from what it could have been used to what it then would be able to be used for. And one of the biggest changes, amongst other things like including stormwater as part of utility infrastructure, where it had previously only said water, sewer, broadband, it included stormwater, which includes culverts, things of that nature. The revenue loss section of that also opened it up to what they called general government services, which, if you read through all 436 pages of it, includes a wide variety, or pretty much anything that the town would use as an operational expense. So wherever the money went is where it went, in my mind, at least at this point, but my focus is where we move forward as a community with the 26,000 or so that's left. And to have the conversation, because we got, coincidentally and conveniently, our first Highway Commission meeting next Thursday, to try to figure out where we're gonna fund road maintenance from, because we're already at 85% of our annual road maintenance budget, and there wasn't anything for road construction, so we're in a hole. And if the funding is available through something like the remainder of what's left in the ARPA funding, is something that I would like to pursue, if we can, to try to utilize and leverage that funding towards something that we currently don't have funded, so.
I agree. I was at a class last week in Fond du Lac. Carol Nowicki was the Wisconsin Towns Association. She's a lawyer there. Other people asked this, brought up roads and ARPA funds and so on and so forth. Specific questions like that have been brought up here before. Can you use this for future road fixes, whether it be potholes, new sections of road, sewer systems, etc.? Her answer is yes. Also, these ARPA funds can be used for EMS, fire, police, not for past debt, but for future expenses. So, after listening to Josh and hearing from her, that's what I have heard from her.
And I heard the same thing in my class that I took last week.
Well, that's right, you took a degree there. So that's what I've learned about it, Josh and the attorney. So would you feel that we could use the monies towards road fixing, like he said, future expense?
Yeah, my initial inclination is, yeah, I think it's written broadly enough that we would be able to do that, but I want to complete the research just to make sure, not just give it the top of the head opinion.
Okay, we'll do so, I guess. Right?
Okay, is that what you want me to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything more on that subject? Well, airport facilities. Which invoice is that?
Number 2? And there's a couple pages on that one, so you'd have to look through the,
What's the statement on that?
66517. And also 66524.
Do you want me to go through the billing that you highlighted on there?
Right, yes.
So the first one on January 3rd of 2023, both Larry and Winona had reached out to me because they received a number of letters from constituents complaining about the proposed use of ARPA funds at that time. This sort of dovetailed with the other research that I had done previously. I reviewed the restrictions. I reviewed a response that I think Winona and Larry were coordinating. Ultimately, it came from Larry. I enclosed a copy of that. I think that's the first document of the materials that you guys
I've
have.
seen that.
Right. And I advised Larry that if you see that there's an attached page that went along with that, saying that what I did is I modified the response that Larry put together. And I advised him that if he wanted to post this on Facebook or other media, that he needed to sign it under his own name because it should not be presented as a board-approved response. That was coming from Larry at that point, and Larry alone. And I just copied the other board members with that email so that they were aware that Larry would be posting that under his name. But he felt it was important to get some sort of a response out there to the public about what were widespread concerns at that point in time.
Okay, I'm actually over here on this sheet here, the second page 2 she said, that's what I was.
No, okay, well, I was dealing with the first one that was highlighted there, but some caucus and continuing goals. I don't recall that, and I didn't, sorry, I was thinking it was on page 1, so I'd have to say apologize with it looks like, I think I reviewed an update that Winona had supplied about caucus and continuing goals for airport issues. I don't have my own recollection of what that was that Winona had supplied to me. If I have it, I can forward that to the board.
What's the issue with the website on 124? What's that?
I don't honestly recall what the question was about the website. I can locate that email and try to get that to you.
Okay, see Airport Commission, what page is that?
Well, that's also the number 2 packet, so you'd have to look at the things that you have highlighted,
Is that that same invoice, 66517?
or 66524.
Researching autonomy of Airport Commission.
Right, yeah, so that was research that my associate Zach Hetfield had done, I believe at the request of Dave Hefkin. There was a question about just what authorities did the Airport Commission have and what was the, I guess, the separation of powers between the Airport Commission and the town. So Zach, I think, did his own research on that.
Will we provide a copy of that?
Nope. And I don't think that he has I think that was just time that he spent doing his own research on that so he could answer the phone call that Dave Hefkin later wanted to have with him. Looks like I ended up having that phone call with Dave Hefkin.
There is no record of the information provided to you?
It was provided to Dave Hefkin.
Right.
I don't believe so. I'd have to ask Attorney Hatfield.
It would be
I mean,
important for us to understand what that authority and
Well,
line of
yeah,
demarcation
sure.
is.
So normally the authority is going to be the statute. So what does the Wisconsin statute have to say about airport commissions and what, you know, it's going to be found in the same chapter of the Wisconsin towns. There's a authorizing statute there that applies to Wisconsin airport commissions. I'm confident that's what he was researching.
You didn't already have a copy of that ordinance?
Well, it's a state statute. If you want, I can forward to you the state statute.
Sure you can look at it.
Then looking at the water statutes, right?
Is that 114?
No, 114 is a different topic.
Okay, the next one, same day really, phone conversation with Dave Hefkin regarding long-term lease and other concerns pending possible change in the composition of the town board. What's that about?
Right, well, I think the long-term lease had to do with the equipment lease. And that was a discussion I was drafting at that point, an equipment lease for the town that was being circulated because it was going to need approval by the airport commission.
Any questions anyone?
Lots of questions. Lots of questions. Doesn't sound like you have any answers though.
Moving on, Josh, anything?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these were, you know, correspondent, I'm gonna say mildly correspondence on the fly by the town board regarding, town board or airport commission chair regarding, you know, I'll call them brainstorms of operations and protocol and that kind of stuff. And, to a point, there's not a ton we're gonna be able to do about past procedure. I mean, we've already kind of put in our own scenario of not just calling Attorney Larson on a whim with a brainstorm, is to actually vet it through the board or a different committee or commission beforehand, but.
Well, that's the problem with vetting it through the board. We only got 3 members. So you guys can't talk with each other about something that is a topic of interest. So that's usually why I end up fielding calls from one or Larry or Dick for that matter on something that was of interest. If it came from a committee, yeah, I could talk to the committee member, but if it involved, well, it couldn't involve a conversation that board members had outside of this type of public meeting.
Right, but I think that's, speaking for myself and hopefully moving forward, is that we get to a point where we're being proactive with how we're addressing things and not, you know, not having to have 4 different phone calls with 5 different people on the same day to address something that, I mean, no offense to anybody, half of the stuff that we've been invoiced for had 0 result other than to educate someone about a brainstorm. So it's unfortunate, to one regard, and at the same point, if you know, folks got more informed about what their roles or positions are, obviously there's a cost of doing business on that as well, but.
And just adding on to that a little bit, folks. We went through this, 34 at minimum phone calls or emails, some type of contact with the lawyer from one of the past board members. 25 at minimum contacts from the airport commissioner, Dave Hefkin.
Give the time, what time frame?
In the last 4 to 5 months. That, in my opinion, is excessive. He's gonna charge for his services, which he should, that's how he makes money. But, my God, we gotta put a kibosh on just calling and calling and calling. That's what you have us here, is to try and be fiscally responsible for you.
And that's one of our goals, in trying to get good open communications with the airport commission, is so that we talk to each other and we don't have to individually go to Attorney Larson. We just work it out between us.
Well, in his defense, I'll say this, if he's looking for a legal opinion, he should be coming to me. And he shouldn't be talking to the board or the airport commission to get a legal opinion.
I would agree with that.
Yep. I agree with that 100%.
So diving into some of this, and it is slightly out of order, but generally inclusive of the conversation is to the aspect of the authority of the airport commission as it stands. The authority of the airport commission would also be to own, maintain, and operate the airport as a whole. And where part of my concern is that roughly $6,000 of our $10,000 we have spent has been with correspondence directly with the airport commission that the town has paid for to date through 2023. So my question would be, and I agree with your statement that if someone is looking for legal opinion, you're the person to talk to. At the same point, if there is the solidarity on both sides of the fence, does the town have a legal obligation to pay for the correspondence that you may have with someone who's not affiliated with the board?
If it's undertaken at the request of the board, or if it's a necessary follow-through to answer questions posed by the board, then yes. The whole thing with the application for rezoning, by the way, I mean, I think that's the bulk of the billing that you're pointing to, right? I mean, the land is owned by the town.
Mm-hmm.
The airport commission by itself can't make that rezoning happen.
Right.
So that has to come from the town. And the town, as the owner of the property, is the only one that can make the application for the rezone. So that's why the billing relating to the rezoning went to the town rather than the airport commission.
Correct. So at the same point, if the town is the one that's the owner of the property and responsible for the rezone, would it not also be the town that has the body of authority to make those decisions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the airport commission is primarily involved in the operations of the
Correct.
airport, but the actual zoning status of the land where the airport is located is the town's responsibility.
It literally has zero to do with the authority of the airport commission and has 100% authority because the town is the ownership.
I think it does affect the airport commission.
Well,
I mean, they're interested in building more hangars there, of
Correct.
course, so
Yeah.
that's their interest and why some of the conversation involved those concerns.
So if there, for instance, if the village would have rejected the rezone request, the airport commission had zero legal authority to go back to the village and request a reconsideration. That would be something that would have to be borne out of the town board.
I agree.
Okay.
At that time, the town board and the
No,
airport commission were aligned.
I'm
so
trying to make
that's why
myself
it
smarter as long as
happened
you're
that way.
sitting in the room with me, so.
Going to a point made earlier, and I think I saw in one of your emails to us, the airport is a separate legal entity?
It's, the airport is owned by the town, you
Right.
know, and so it's not a separate legal entity, the airport
I
commission
thought I
is.
saw an email or something from you where you stated that.
He said the commission is a separate legal entity.
Okay, all right. Semantics, can you explain that?
Well, the commission's a separate entity that's allowed by statute, and the town board created an airport commission. So it's been authorized, it's been formed by the town, so it has separate independent standing, apart from the town itself.
Okay, just again, trying to educate ourselves. Where does that separate entity come into play? On what type of issues?
Well, the airport commission is, again, responsible for the operations of the airport,
Right.
so the day-to-day operations, and that's what the statute that applies to airport commissions spells out what their authority is.
We have that in the ordinance, correct?
No, it's in the state statute.
State statute, it's not our ordinance.
Right.
Okay.
So there's, just to follow up Rob's and potentially clarify a little, the statute outlines the governance of the commission's existence, and the town has the ability to tighten up or prescribe a little more specifically the roles and responsibilities within the big umbrella that the commission has statutory authority for.
I'm not certain I would agree with that. I mean, that once you create the airport commission, then the airport commission is responsible to follow the authority that's set forth in the authorizing statute. And so that's, whatever I don't have the language to quote to you right now, but that would be the language that they would be tasked with applying to the operations of the airport.
Okay. The town board has the ability to, what's the right way for me to say this? So the statute grants the general authority of the airport commission and other similar commission standpoints within statutory authority. The local body has the ability to tighten up the regulation that they are prescribed with. Is that similar in this case? In the case of a utility commission, right? It's a statutory grant by the city or village or a town, and then that city, village, or town has the ability to say, we grant you these authorities with these additional requirements of, let's say, spending purchases or equipment or those types of things. Is that something that potentially would be similarly applicable with that?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay.
Honestly, I'd have to look into it.
Sure.
I don't want to commit to that without doing the research.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So we have 5 people on the commission. I'm one of them. There's 4 others. What are the terms of commission? How are they?
I don't know. I don't know how, when was the last time somebody was,
Well, there are 2 of them were appointed. 2 were appointed not too long ago. Last few months, well, maybe until the last year, I didn't track of time.
yeah, I don't know when the last folks were, off the top of my head, when the last folks were appointed to that commission.
Are they
Is it
appointed
till
by
it-
the commission or are they appointed by the town?
By us.
By us.
Can the commissioner be removed at any time?
Not at any time, no. I mean, once they're appointed, I think there's some statutory authority for removal for cause. They're
And
doing
again,
something.
we're not suggesting that, we're asking so we can understand how this works.
Guys, I think we're getting beyond what the scope of what we've actually got on the agenda is as well. So the agenda says we're supposed to be talking about billing and prior services.
Okay, on 1/12/23, call with Winona regarding creating a quasi-public entity to sell the airport to.
Yeah, I think Winona had spoken with someone that floated that as a possible option. And
For what purpose?
you have to ask her. I don't recall the exact purpose. She asked me to look into whether we could create a quasi-public entity to sell the airport to. I looked into it and told her I didn't think that we could.
Thank you. Issue of funds. Yeah, I'm down to 120, on the date 120. You want to talk about that or not?
Sure.
Moving forward, 1/20/23, call with town board, revised application, call with Dave regarding new funds. What new funds?
Yeah, I think he was referring to funding that the airport commission had, I forget exactly how this worked, this wasn't my phone call, but funds that the airport commission could rely on for payment of some of the application fee. Right, not the fee itself that the town had to pay, but there were some of the costs that the village was imposing on the town and on the airport commission. Dave Hefkin had done some work to locate an alternate source of funds to pay some of those fees. Beyond that, I don't recall exactly what that source was.
Okay. Utility district. We're still on this, I believe, where we at here,
125.
oh, 125, and I'm looking at
I think
we already spoke about the website.
Which is on 126.
126, review statute and guidance documents put out by the DOT discussing commissions. Draft response to Attorney Larson's email. Can you provide that to us? Starting to get confusing.
Right, I don't have that in the materials here.
Okay, the next one, I've got still page 2.
Does the board want me to locate that and send it to you?
Please. And this one here, the utility district.
Which statement are you on? Actually, just to be clear, what item are we on now on the agenda?
Yeah.
H.
Creation of utility district.
That would be your number 3, which is 6694.